Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Not a lot of snow on the ground, so we're into our end of season reviews on our sleds. And next up, we're gonna look at the 2024 Renegade 900R Turbo, and lots to talk about with this sled, so let's get into it. Hey everyone, I hope you guys all had a great riding season, and you know, there's not a lot of snow left on the ground, so I know things are winding down pretty much for everybody. You know, I just got back from a final kind of weekend wrap up in Cochrane like we do every year, and had a blast. Got very lucky last weekend with some of the added snow that we got. You know, wanted to spend, you know, a bunch of time today talking a little bit about this 2024 Renegade 900R Turbo that we picked up for this year. You know, again, it was really nice. I was able to split my time again between the 852 stroke and the 900R 4-stroke. And holy cow, lots to talk about this sled, obviously in the new G5 platform for this season. The first big thing with this sled in the G5 is the handling that I noticed immediately. And when we got this sled up to Valen, you know, to start trying it out, this sled cornered incredibly flat. I couldn't believe how different it was actually compared to the last mock that I had, the 2022 mock. The G5, first things first, felt a lot lighter on the front end and as far as steering goes and steering effort. And the cornering was insanely flat, like could not lift a ski at all. And that's one of the things that I like about the 900R turbos and the 4-strokes is obviously they got a little bit heavier front end, but it really helps to keep them planted on the trail, and they handle exceptionally well. This one, as far as front end, you know, handling is the best I've ever had out of a 4-stroke, and I really loved it. You pair that with these smart shocks, and we've done lots of talking about the smart shocks in the past. This sled handled bumps incredibly well, like surprising how well it actually did it. When we were in Valen, there's a real rough section in between Valenois and Chapelle, and that section is known for about 50K. It's mogulled out all the time. There was one night I remember coming back and we just pounded through, and I had no issues with this thing. It was the best that I've ever had as far as you know, handling big bumps on a 4-stroke sled. I've got it just over 4,000. I think I'm 4,200 kilometers on this sled for the season. And I had a chance to really put it through the paces with all different types of trail riding. And again, I really just think that out of all of the 4-strokes that I've had to date, it's miles ahead than what my G4 was. So I don't know why. There's something obviously different with the front end on these sleds. I heard a rumor that maybe the shocks and the shafts on this one might be a little bit shorter than what they were on the previous G4. And again, I don't know if that's true or not. All I know is that after my first week of riding this thing up in Valen, I called Chris from Ledger Performance right away and said, hey, like, is it just me, or is this sled a lot different than the G4 900s? And he totally agreed with me. I mean, this thing handled awesome for kind of a bigger, heavier 4-stroke sled. Just couldn't believe how well it did. So, you know, overall front end, we pair that up obviously with, I went with a Bergstrom setup on this sled this year. Now in the past, I've tried and run pretty much everything. If you guys follow the channel, you know I've tried a lot of different carbide setups in the past. And I started out with a 6-inch triple point, and then I used their Good and Uglies on the outside, and the sled railed. It handled really well. I burnt those out actually throughout the season just because, again, everybody was dealing with low snow conditions this year. Ended up going to an 8-inch triple point up the middle. A little bit more steering effort for sure, but also a really nice sort of setup, and it's real just point and shoot type of setup. So the Bergs for me worked really well on the 900R this year. I didn't really feel like it was too much steering effort, and you know, it was just an awesome setup this year. So one of the other actual accessories that I got to test out on the sled this year was the LED signal lights, and I actually really liked the idea of them and the concept. I think it's the right thinking from Ski-Doo. And there were a couple of times actually this season where I used all the features, and you know, if I was riding mid-pack, I would have them on amber just to let them know that folks were behind me. I had another scenario where I was actually towing Jeff down from the Canyon and Cochrane, and I had the flashers on. So I really love the look and the design and kind of the idea behind the LED signal lights this year. That was a new product that Ski-Doo came out with for the season that we added to the 900, and really, really love it, and certainly we'll keep using those in the future. So one of the other things I also ran this year was the handguard mirrors, and I've used these on previous sleds in the past, and I think I even said in my backcountry video, if you caught that, you know, these aren't the greatest, but this sled mainly rode, you know, in Quebec quite a bit this year, so you must have these installed on the left side somewhere affixed to the sled, so you got to run the mirrors. You know, I commented that, you know, these aren't the greatest, and I would love to see Ski-Doo integrate something into the panel so that you can really have a nice view behind you of what's going on. In these, you really just sort of pick up the headlights, and that's about all you're going to see. So I'd like to see Ski-Doo do something maybe a little bit different, similar to the Polaris, how they have that integrated mirror into the side panel. But, you know, for the most part, like I said, this was kind of my big mile, you know, saddlebagging Quebec sled, so got to run mirrors, and you know, they work okay. I had also moved from the low windshield setup to the medium windshield setup, and the funny sort of story behind this was Chris was actually running my sled earlier this year, and he was racing Jeff down the trail, and I think that he found there's a whole lot of wind resistance actually on the body with the lower windshield, and with the medium windshield, he actually found that he gained almost 15 kilometers an hour on the sled. So that was pretty cool. And so, you know, right away he ripped off the low and he put me on this really nice medium windshield that we had. Same thing, wrapped matte black just to finish off the look of the sled. And it looks dynamite. And not only that, just, you know, that's a tip for everybody. Not only is it functional and just provides that added wind protection, but you're also going to pick up some speed on it as if you're going to run one of these as well. So that was kind of an interesting finding to me. Definitely not something I would have really ever thought about, but you know, Chris is really knowledgeable, and he's great when it comes to the performance stuff. So that was one thing that we learned this year that was pretty cool. One of the things that I love that they changed with the G5 this year on the 900 is the seat. And, you know, I think I spoke about this right when we got the sled. It was kind of the first thing that I noticed. So they've changed sort of the shape of it a little bit. Not only that, it actually worked with my rear tail seat bag, which was great. The 11-liter bag that we like to run on the back. And we usually just store, you know, some camera gear and stuff in there, hat, whatever. But the seat itself, I thought was a lot more firmer than in the previous, you know, mock that I had. I complained immediately about that seat and how soft it was, and we ended up swapping it out. I think the second day we had it up in Cochrane, and we threw an 850 seat on it. You know, so that'll work on these as well. But this new 900 seat, I was super happy with it. It's the right firmness, and it's kind of the right size, and it's super comfortable for long periods of time on the trails. You know, we did multiple 400-kilometer days, and it was beautiful, super comfortable. All right, so, you know, the biggest eye-opener this year was, again, partnering up and working with Chris over at Ledger Performance and adding some more horsepower to this sled. I always liked the 900R motor. I never, you know, disliked it. I always thought it was a great motor. We always talked about, you know, just noticing that little bit of lag in terms of how these engines build power and pick up speed. And SnowTrax has talked about it. I mean, anybody who has one of these, if you're comparing back to back to an 850, you're gonna notice it right away. It's definitely got a little bit of lag to it in the throttle. And so what we talked about with Chris, and this was over the summertime, because I honestly, you know, was a little apprehensive about it at first, but we ended up going with an MCX 210 kit for this sled this year. And what that does is it's a little control box that plugs into your injectors. It changes the tune and the mapping of the sled, and it provides a lot more power and a lot more boost. So you're going from about 17 pounds of boost stock to just over 20 pounds of boost with this MCX kit. I can't say enough good things about the setup and the power of this sled. This is exactly how the 900, in my opinion, for the mock, when they came out with that sled and said it was a Mach Z, this is how it should have been. The power difference with the MCX 210 kit is phenomenal. It's a huge difference. And it kind of makes it feel like, I would almost say like snappier, like a two-stroke. It really does clean up the power in that throttle and any delay in that throttle. It's pretty much instant in sport mode. It's as instant as you're gonna get and as close to a two-stroke as you're gonna get when you add the Tune and Chris's clutching to these 900s. I honestly have never had a big high horsepower sled like this. I've had a chance to ride some in the past, not many, definitely not turbos, but older two-strokes that, you know, I've ridden. The power on the sled was phenomenal, and it really made it feel like it was a little bit more nimble and a lot more fun to ride. And that's what I was looking for. I don't care about top speed. I mean, it's rare that you're really ever pinned on these things unless you're lake racing, but you know, it really does make it a lot more fun to trail ride when you have that extra power, and you can really get the front end. This sled, the front end lifts easier than anything I've ever driven. Any of the sleds I've had in the past. It's unbelievable. When it hooks, it's just, you just tap the throttle and the front end really will come up super easy. It's just because of all that added power and obviously the traction, which I'll talk about in a bit. But it really does make a massive difference. Now, I honestly feel like this is what the 900 should be. The experience that I got on this sled this year, I raved about it all season, how much fun it was, how powerful it was, and it really just makes a massive difference. And again, Chris was really the one to sort of get me over the goal line to say, you know, the MCX box, it's new for this year, but he tested it last year, and it really does work wonders on the 900R. So let's get into a little more detail on the MCX kit, because I had a lot of people reach out to me and a lot of questions, and it was a new product that was being, you know, that we were at least trying out for this year, and a lot of folks were trying this year. And we did have some issues with it at the beginning. Now, what I heard was the 23s, they worked really well with that MCX box. No engine codes or anything like that. It was rare that you'd see that. I actually did have some issues when we first installed it, and I went up to Cochrane, and it was all because the clutching just wasn't right for the most part. And what was happening was we were hitting the rev limiter on the sled, and we were really trying to get the clutching dialed in so that we wouldn't hit that rev limiter. As soon as the rev limiter is hit on these, it immediately will throw a check engine light and go into limp mode. And so that was happening quite a bit. And it took us a little bit to get the clutching sorted out. So I had to go back to Chris, and he added some more weight into the primary clutch, went back out, and the thing ran flawless for the rest of the year. So just getting that clutch tweaking, you know, for the sled dialed in was really key and really critical. And that's really what was happening as far as, you know, throwing the check engine light and this thing going into limp mode early on. So again, just want to be honest so that you guys know what you're, you know, what you might be dealing with. But for the most part now, we know exactly what that was. And like I said, I rode it the rest of the season, another 3,000 kilometers, zero issues with it, you know, with it doing that. Now, I also heard that the 24s were having some issues with check engine lights and starting. And I had that even without the MCX box in it. And I, you know, early on, I think a lot of folks may have experienced it where you go to start it and immediately your check engine light would go on and then all of a sudden it would disappear. I had that throughout the season, really more so at the beginning of the season. Now, I also don't know if it may be the fact that the MCX, when you add that to the sled, maybe the ECU takes a little bit of time. The computer needs to get to know what's going on because things are changing. It's a possibility. But like I said, that all sort of dissolved, you know, once we got a couple miles. I think I got about 400K, 500K on it. And like I said, it ran flawlessly the whole year. So a massive, massive difference in power. It's like 200, they say 210 horsepower. I think it's more. I also had a chance to try some of the other tunes that are out there, some of the other 900s that we were with in Vallon this year. Our buddy Beaver let me try his, which I think had a Precision, or maybe it was a Hurricane kit in his. Personally, I feel like out of all of them, this one pulled the hardest. This one pulls really, really well, and it's super, super strong. For me personally, I will never ride another 900 without it. And the beauty of this box and going with the MCX kit is it's a plug and play device that you can literally just plug it in the injectors, you know, hook it into the sled, it plugs into the port on the sled, and easily remove it and take it to the next one. And that was the big thing for me. I wasn't interested in, you know, Chris talks about cutting ECUs and stuff like that in the install video that we did on this. I'm not interested in that. I want it to be super easy. And for me, the MCX 210 is just a simple plug and play kit. And not only that, it just friggin' works amazingly well. It's incredible. Once you drive it and once you try one, I think you'd probably be pretty similar to me, and you probably can't go back to stock after that. So we had, you know, as an example, 2 guys out of the group of 12 that we had out in our Gas Bay trip this year. Me and Jeff Hunt both had them in our sleds, and the 2 of us smiling ear to ear. He absolutely loves his. And again, his has been flawless all season. They friggin' work amazing. You're about 3K, you know, installed Canadian for the kit through Chris. He's going to be having an upcoming sale in the fall, and they're going to be, you know, I think he did about 25 or 30 kits this year, and I'm sure he's going to do a lot more next year. So if you're interested and you're thinking about it, definitely get in touch with Chris from Ledger Performance, and you know, you can talk to him. If you have questions or you want to talk a little bit more in detail about my experience, you know, I'm happy for you guys to reach out to me and we can chat about it. But for me, this is like the ticket as far as a big mile, high horsepower, big power touring sled. This is it. And it's certainly my #1 choice for any kind of saddlebagging or touring that you're going to be doing. You cannot beat the way this thing is actually set up. And this was just an absolute blast to ride this year. Like I said, over 4,000 K on it, and I fell in love with the 900 in a totally different way this year. So really been happy with it. So in order to handle all that power, you know, up front with the motor, the rear end was super important, and we went to a 2-ply track with a much bigger and taller stud this year. And that was something new that I learned, and I'd heard from a couple different guys. My buddy Adam has been doing that for a few years, and Chris was you know, telling me we're gonna go with a bigger stud. Went with a 2-ply ripsaw track, a 1.25-inch track. So we swapped out what came on it, and we ended up putting bigger Woody studs in it. So these ones are, I wanna say they're 1.6-inch studs that we went with, which is a pretty tall stud, but holy cow, does it hook. And I've only got 96 studs in this sled compared to 144 1.45s that I put in my mock. And this sled hooks way better than that thing did. So that was a key learning for me. And again, 20 years experience, and you know, I'm still learning. So going forward, you know, for any studding that I do, I'm going 96 studs, and I'm going with a taller stud, with a bigger stud. It's definitely a massive difference in terms of how these things hook up on the trail, on hardpack, and really just being able to, you want to get that traction to lift over that next, you know, knoll coming up in the trail. It's so easy to do. I mean, it's amazing. This sled does it, you know, better than anything I've ridden yet. The other thing too is we had the Performance Stud Star aluminum backers on this thing. Crazy expensive backers. I think they're like just over $3 a piece, but I love the look, and we had 0 issues. None of them, you know, broke or anything like that. They're rock solid, and they're super light. So we'll definitely be using those, I think, in the future as well. I was really happy. I love the look of those things. Really high quality, high end aluminum backer. So we're definitely going to use those moving forward. So overall, you know, I think the big thing is when you're adding, you know, the added power to these things, even if you're not, I mean, you just want to make sure that you've got the power to the track and that track hooks up. And I think just that kind of stud combination and, you know, tip, at least from some of the guys who know a lot more than I do, I was incredibly impressed with this thing. It worked amazing on the trail. This thing is an absolute weapon on the trail. And, you know, I think just having that, to me, the MCX 210 kit with a really good stud package and track in the back, you're going to be real happy with what you've got. I think for me, you know, just having that MCX 210 kit paired with a really good track and stud combo is the ticket for this thing. It's an absolute trail monster, and it's definitely been, you know, the choice for any saddlebag or touring that you're gonna do. You know, the big thing, obviously, no oil. So you don't have to worry about oil. I'd be nervous on that Gas Bay trip, you know, how we would even take an 850 and figure out where can we get BRP oil. A lot of those towns didn't have dealerships. You're probably gonna end up running, you know, whatever oil they've got at the gas station, you're gonna end up dumping in the 850s. So to me, the big thing for the 4-strokes is, firstly, on the fast highways of Quebec, these things are not working as hard as an 850 is. An 850 is gonna be screaming along forever. And I just love the fact that with the more power, you can dial back your throttle a little bit, and the 4-strokes just aren't working as hard. What that also means is less fuel. And I'd be curious, we didn't have an 850 on the Gas Bay trip, but for the most part, you're gonna use less fuel on the 4-stroke compared to the 850s, because you're always gonna be in that upper RPM with those power valves just screaming along. So I think you know, for anybody who's out there that's doing touring or doing saddlebagging, I mean, that Gas Bay trip was a great example, because all 12 of us were all on 900R turbos. So everybody was on a 4-stroke. You really don't see that many 850s touring around there. And I think for the most part, you're just seeing more and more and more people, especially in Quebec, on the trails. Most of them have 4-strokes these days. And it's just because of the ease, the gas and go, you're not dealing with the oil, and they're just reliable. And plus you can put massive miles on these things and never really have to worry about anything. Do your gear case oil changes, do your regular oil and filter changes, and Bob's your uncle, you're done. So, you know, this thing for me was the ticket for sure for big miles and for saddlebagging. You know, it's really nice that I get to obviously, you know, benefit from having both the 850 and the 900, but it also allows me to really be able to give you guys some good real world input on the big differences between them. And like I said, I fell in love with this 900 this year, and you know, it is for sale. If anybody's interested, we are gonna sell it just because we were gonna get another 900 for next year, but maybe go in a bit of a different direction. So if this sled sells, we weren't planning on selling it, but if it sells, we're gonna pick up another 900R and you know, do something different with that one. But for the most part, I don't mind. I mean, I'm happy to keep this sled, and I'll run it again for next season just because it is perfect the way that it is. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and like I said, if you've got any questions on these 900R turbos, as far as, you know, how we set it up this year or anything around the MCX 210 kit, you can talk to me. We can put you in touch with Chris, obviously, at Ledger Performance. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope this is an informative video for you. Any questions at all, don't hesitate to reach out to me. And hey, this is the last end of season review video for me. Jesse's coming up with his 850 MXZ. And appreciate you guys watching the video, and we'll see you on the next one.